Truth in This Art. This is an episode of the Truth in This Art Beyond, and we're in the Big Easy, New Orleans, Louisiana, and I am thrilled to have my next guest, a restaurateur and a literacy advocate, as well as writer and so many other superlatives. Along with her husband, Scott, she spent a lifetime composing their remarkable story as a couple who met as teenagers, got married, and forged a relationship as business partners in one of New Orleans' most successful restaurants. She's a true inspiration, and I am honored to have her here today. Please welcome Jane Wolfe. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much for finding me.
Yes.
So I'm honored to be here with you.
I appreciate it, and it's I was joking about the whole connection, like ultimately how everything happened. It went from like me meeting someone at the Small Press Expo. I believe I met Keith Knight at the Small Press Expo, who connected me to Liza Donnelly, who connected me to you.
I love that. It's all about connections, right?
Yes, and I'm looking forward to learning, because there are so many visiting your space. There were so many like things that I saw there, questions that have come up. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So starting off, I like to ask that sort of introductory question, right?
Yeah.
And again, welcoming you to the podcast, but I want to get that question out there about like some of those roots. Like I find that a lot of our creative, a lot of our entrepreneurial roots, are kind of put out there. Bedrock is out there when we're very, very young. So what were some of your like early creative interests, whether it was like, reading, whether it was you had a lemonade stand or something as far as the entrepreneurial side? What were some of the things you were doing growing up? And I got a couple bullet points, but I at least want to start off there.
Well, growing up, Rob, I was lucky enough to be a part of a family that my father worked for a furniture store for over 35 years. And I was lucky enough to be a part of his transition from working at a furniture store and going after 35, 40 years and taking a step to own his own business. So I saw that transition. It was in my family, right?
Yeah.
And so when you say creative interest, to be an entrepreneur or whatever, or what I'm doing right now, I think there's great. There's something beautiful about being a part of something, right? That makes you think you're able to do it. So to get into business, I was lucky enough to see somebody go into business. Look, my daddy opened a little bitty grocery store, no more than 1,000 square feet, but he did it. Yeah. And so that made me want to do things creatively in regard to how am I doing what I'm doing now. That's all I can say is that when I was younger, I dreamed of being a priest or a teacher. I mean, I used to play school. We played school a lot and we played church. That's what we did. And I remember I was the priest. I was the one giving the host, and I was the teacher. So that's about the only creativeness I can think about that would take me to where I am today in regard to literacy and reading and in regard to, spirituality and teaching world religions. And that was what I did when I was younger.
No, I can see it. I can see it. And, definitely, with some of the conversation that we had when Koo and I were there and, just going over like the long list of like just like press and everything. I was like, there is a lot here. I was like, I need to do this justice. This is going to be great. And I always talk about when I was younger, one of my early experiences that I can remember was being the masters of ceremony for like elementary school play or something, right? I was maybe 5.
Yeah.
I looked super cute. I had like the same like face, but hair, and now as I look upon that, I was like, yeah, this is kind of that's probably the earliest point I can remember doing something remotely close to what I'm doing now.
Right. Remotely close.
Yeah.
But it's funny, but I saw myself as a leader in those respects, right? So the priest or the teacher, it's kind of interesting that it's just interesting when I look back in life and see that that's the creativeness that I saw from looking back.
So
and you the master of ceremonies right now.
Some might say that. So I'm trying.
Yeah.
So what sorts of like things were you like into growing up? Like, did you have a favorite book that you were into? Like, you remember reading? Like, yep, that was that book. Yeah.
I had no favorite books.
Oh, really?
Not at all. I don't remember books being discussed heavily in my life. I do remember that my daddy made sure that we had the Britannica. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica. We had the junior division, and we had the big one for adults. Yeah. I do remember that was in our house. But that's the only books I remember. What I did when I was younger, Rob, I was in a church choir. I played the guitar, and I remember songs and singers more than I remember reading. I did not have a favorite book growing up at all.
I hear you.
Which is unbelievable to even think about. But I guess if you say the most favorite book was the Bible, but I read the Bible by learning it through in a Catholic school. So we weren't big, heavy Bible readers every Friday night or Saturday or Sunday. But I was in a choir. I did play the guitar. My mama was the choir director at a Catholic church. And we practiced every week and we played songs. And I guess one of my favorite singers in life was Barbra Streisand.
Oh, wow.
And Neil Diamond, if you can believe that.
Neil Diamond.
Oh, and the Commodores. I did like the Commodores. And Lionel Richie, he got my attention. But I was more interested in singers than authors. I didn't have a favorite author.
But some singers, I think a lot of them are storytellers. So in some ways they are authors if they're singer-songwriters, right? Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, Barbra Streisand, I remember dreaming to sing like her. Seriously.
Yeah. No, that's great. Like, having, obviously family is a piece of it, having, as you were describing with your father, as you were describing with your mother, like some of those sort of early impactful things that are there that I think are kind of flourishing in what you're doing within your career and the work that you're doing. So without burying the lead much more, tell us about Melba's. Like, let's talk about that a little bit. I have I read that it's New Orleans' most busy like PoBoy shop.
Busiest PoBoy shop in America. That's my husband's marketing genius right there.
I love it. And also that a New Orleans PoBoy is an intersection for everyone. Like, literally when I got off the plane, right, I was like, I need a PoBoy stat. It's like, I didn't care about my luggage. I wanted a PoBoy.
Right. Yeah, we're known for it, for sure.
And also with that, let's talk about the business a little bit. And also let's talk about just this other distinction of the only restaurant literacy program in the world. Like when I saw those are both effective. Like my background was in marketing before going into podcasting, right? So I'm seeing those. I was like, all right, I love it.
Yeah. Well, in marketing, and I learned this through the grapevine in regard to doing it, right? You got to say what you're doing, and you got to say what you're doing to everybody within 7 words or less. And if you can't say what you're doing in 7 words or less, you don't know what you're doing. Right. So we are America's busiest PoBoy shop because there's not a PoBoy shop in New Orleans that's busier than us. And it might be because we got a daiquiri shop attached to it. It might be because we got a laundromat attached to it. But the fact of the matter is, and it might be because we sell dinner plates, and it might be because we open 24 hours. But the fact of the matter is, we are the busiest PoBoy shop in America. And we also the only restaurant that I know of in the world that has an active literacy program running through it. And so Melba's is a 24-hour PoBoy shop with a daiquiri and a laundromat hooked to it. And it started because my husband and I were in the grocery business for 35 years. Hurricane Katrina took us out of that. I went to school late in life. And one day he passed this location on the corner of Elysian Fields and Claiborne and said, I think this is a good spot for a PoBoy Shoppe. And I said, yep, it sure is. Do it. So he did it. And the rest is history there. It just so happens that after being in business 40 years, I have been bestowed and endowed with the ability to see business from a social entrepreneurial perspective. And this spot is perfect as a vessel for what I'm doing now in regard to literacy.
Yeah.
So it's a 24-hour PoBoy shop with a laundromat and a daiquiri store. And we have over 1,000 people a day that walk through, and we see people face to face. And that is a beautiful thing in and of itself right there. And the face-to-face interactions is something that is so important today. And, and there's greater responsibility in recognizing yourself in that position. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'll say, like, and looking at it and being there and experiencing it and being able to see each part of it, it felt like, I always joke about it. It felt like I was visiting, when I go to New Orleans, it feels like I'm visiting like my cousins. It feels like that. Right. And,
right.
And being in each part, like, I remember you told us, like, I'm going to be busy until 1. I was like, cool. And while we're waiting there, we happened to see you by mistake. You were like coming there. It's like, oh, hey guys. And,
yeah.
And it was like just really cool to like be in there. And I was like, I can't describe this place outside of being in this place. And it's just definitely, to me, it feels like it's one of those sort of landmarks and just really great to be there. And also this idea of a business being sticky, where you can go there, you can have breakfast, lunch, it's 24 hours, what have you. You can have a pop, you can have a drink, and your chores.
Yeah, and I think you can also feel, right, when you're there, you can feel a lot going on when you're there. And what's interesting, and what is most beautiful about Melba is you can come in we've had people come in their wedding dress and a tuxedo. Yeah. Or they on their way to a funeral, or from a funeral, or they going to a birthday party, so it's an area of town, and it caters to everybody where they are and what they're doing, and there's some comfort to that. You don't have to get dressed up to go, but if you're dressed up, you don't feel out of place. You know, and also there's something beautiful about having a laundromat attached to it and a daiquiri place. And I always look at it's a place that's providing a need. And I think that makes it more comfortable, right? When you go into a grocery store, you're usually comfortable in a grocery store for the most part. It's a shame we don't have many grocery stores, Amazon taking over all of that. But I mean, we have grocery stores, but when you walk into it, because the place is providing a need, whether it's a drink, because you need a drink at the end of the day, whether you need your darn clothes cleaned, or whether you need something to eat. There's something about going to a place that provides a need that makes it more comfortable. It's not like walking into a copy store, right? Yeah. So I don't know what I'm trying to get at that answer, but that's the feel you get in there. And I pertain it to, there's a lot of needs going on when you're in there. And there's a lot of providing to the needs.
Yeah, and it feels like you can just hang out. Like, literally, we were hanging out for a bit, and I think that's part of the thing that makes that brand successful. If we put it in those terms, where there's no rush, you're going to have a conversation with people. I was reading this book about how to engage in small talk better, and they were talking about this idea of working your verbal muscle. Because, like, a lot of times, we don't go into a conversation. We just go into it dry. We haven't talked to anyone yet. And then inevitably something weird comes out. But I think being in there in this sort of face-to-face thing, I feel like I talked to everybody that was on the staff at one point that was there. Yes. And that's the thing. It's like, oh, okay. And, and I'm trying out like this signature daiquiri. It's like, this is my joint. This is what I use. I was like, okay, cool. Right. and then being there to see you guys set up for the sort of
but you helped us.
Yeah. And
that's how it is, right? When you have Melba, you just turn around and say, man, can you help me?
Yeah. And it was not never a no that went through my mind. It was like, oh yeah, let's make this happen. And being in that spot, and it just felt like, oh yeah, I'm helping out my people. That's what it felt like. It felt like community.
Right. That's right. And you know what somebody told me once? I had a professor sitting down in the laundromat with me one day.
Yeah.
And he said, he's looking all around and he's watching. He says, you know what? If Tennessee Williams, and I swear, I'm telling you the truth, Rob, this is his exact words.
Yeah.
If Tennessee Williams were alive today, I could see him sitting right here and just writing all day about everybody that comes through Melba's.
I can see it. Because
it's everybody.
And the thing that was really funny, when we got there, it was kind of like slow. No one was there yet. And as soon as it was book time, as I like to call it, I was like, there are people in and out of here. There's one guy getting a jug of daiquiri. There's another guy.
Right.
I was like, what's happening here? I was like, this is wild. And I saw the busyness.
Right.
So in terms of sort of like stretching and being creative and innovative, like, again, you know, I'm nipping ideas. I see ideas that you guys are executing on, and I'm like, oh, we can bring this back to Baltimore. Oh, we can do this.
Yes.
So how do you like balance the need to be creative and innovative with some of those constraints that businesses encounter, like some of the bottom line stuff, some of the funding stuff, some of the staffing things that come up? How do you stay creative and innovative and while balancing sort of the needs of the business?
Well, that's been a process. That's an interesting question that you just posed to me. How do you stay creative and innovative by having to have the constraints of the business, right, and the funding of it?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting thing because, number one, this has been self-funded by me and my husband. My husband says he's the funder of the last 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. And how I've done it now is that I'm finally a nonprofit. We just became a nonprofit last year. So we've been operating it for 4 years. We've been a nonprofit for about 8 months. And what I'm doing with literacy and the Eat and Read literacy project is that I'm operating in the business. So the literacy project that I'm running right now is working in partnership with the business, right? So it took me a while to figure that out. Like, how am I going to keep this business person happy by him allowing us to operate inside of it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm working in a partnership with the business. So he provides free food if somebody buys a book. And so he's helping me make reading fun, but I'm using the business as a vessel to do what we're doing.
That makes so much sense, and kind of listening to, because you touched on it a little bit, when we were there, and it does make sense. And I think, like, just how everything is kind of aligned and attached with each other. Like, you buy this book on gumbo, here's some gumbo for you that you're going to take home with you. So it's not only enriching the minds and the culture of folk down there, but also filling their bellies and giving them a space. And I think the other thing that's really cool about it, and I think that you as a resident in the local down there, identifying like there's a need, going back to this sort of idea around, we have, different spots that have like literacy issues or what have you, or a literacy desert, or even a food desert in some places that, like, right now in Baltimore, I live in a food desert, right? So it's like, when you're feeling the need, it's like, all right, how do I make this something that I can grow and extend?
What's interesting, when you say food desert, when we were in the grocery business down here in New Orleans from 1978 to about when Katrina hit, we didn't look at where we were as a food desert. I mean, that's an academic term that came about, and a policy-making term that came about, food desert. But it is interesting how it's so used now, and then also the book desert. But when we were operating the grocery stores before we got into Melba's, we didn't know we were in a food desert. We just know that we were selling a lot of food out the grocery store.
Right.
So the aspect of the book desert, I understand what a book desert is termed as.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that the terms are made for policy wonks and policies to get enacted. But I'm giving out books because I'm not giving out books because we're in a book desert. I'm giving out books and being a part of this, of the authors giving out the books through me, because I see people's eyes light up when they get the book.
Yeah. And
there's something about a light in a person's eyes that keeps you doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So the term book desert or food desert, it's quite interesting to me.
Yeah.
But I understand it.
Yeah. And I think, like, you know, with and I want to talk about like numbers a little bit. I'm a data analyst, right? So I'm always interested in the numbers. So,
yes,
you know, share a little bit about the numbers within the literacy program, as far as like you've had some really big names that like lots of authors like work with you guys. And, you know, so essentially for those who are undipped and uninitiated, tell them pretty much what the program is, what the project is rather. Like, you know, we were there and we saw like the sort of virtual like talk through, and it was books going out. I think it was like maybe 100 or more books that were there. Right. So tell us about that.
Well, you know, the virtual aspect of it came about because COVID hit. Mm-hmm. So we had this literacy project going on, and basically what it is, you eat at Melba's at time between 12 and 1 on a Friday, either Thursday or Friday between 12 and 1. You meet an author and you get the book for free.
That's great.
And when the author's there, I mean, it depends on what author's there. When Matthew McConaughey was there, he had a line out the door, right? But some authors might, and he gave away 100 books in an hour. But the 100 books is the magic number. And what happens is within an hour, usually the author sees about 40 people within the hour, 40, 50 people, because Melba's caters, we have about 100 people an hour that come through the door, or 50 to 100 people an hour that come through the door. So we give away the books, 50 books, and then after the author leaves, we'll give away the additional 50 to the next 50 people that come. So that's how we get rid of the 100 books.
Nice.
But in the last 4 years, we've given away 18,500 books.
Wow.
All with author participation. I'm just not handing out books, Rob.
Yeah.
I'm handing out books that the author has said, yes, I will come here and give them away. So we are offering a voice, not just a book. It's not like a bookstore, right? I mean, there's no profit being made on the books. And it's just engage with the community. And make reading fun, and make it where, hey, a person that walks in and sees it says, wow, this was fun getting this book. I'm going to read this book.
It adds another level to that experience.
Yes. And that's exactly what happened to me. And that's why I know it's so powerful. I'll always remember the first book I got from an author was from a former nun. Her name was Karen Armstrong. And I remember she was signing the books. I think it was The History of God. Or The Fields of Blood. I forgot which one. But Karen Armstrong handed me a book and signed it. And I read that whole damn book. And it was just because I met her and shared a little small talk with her, made me want to read the book deeply.
Yes, I hear that. And one of the things I think that's interesting is where, as things become more and more digital, I think one thing as far as like the sort of DNA of your brand, your business is, you know, it's in person. You know, I think that's a piece of it. And in addition to that, I start playing with this idea. We all have limited space as to what we're going to have on us. So, you know, if I get a book directly from someone, like I got a few when I was down there, that's going to go in my studio. That's going to be in my space. There are books that I might read. It might be the audio books, or it might be the library situation where this is a temporary sort of thing. But when it's something that's tangible and you were able to connect on it, it's much more valuable than the book. It's the experience.
That's right. It's the experience of the entirety of how you even got the book.
Yes. So how do some of those connections with the authors come about? Like, is there like describe that sort of like selection process, that sort of like, we're going to talk with 25 authors this year and we want to focus in these areas. How does that go about?
Well, there's no complete we yet. So we having our first board meeting with this first night. So it's been actually kind of mostly me and listening to people of what they interested in. Because you always got to listen to the land, like my husband says. Yeah. And so how people are starting to say, how do you select the books? And the way I've selected it is from a staff member made me realize how I'm selecting the books. His name was Ty, and he worked over there for 5 years. And one day he's flipping through the pages and he says, you know what I tell everybody, Jane? He says, I tell everybody, all these books are just like a college course. You're giving us a whole college course here. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So I almost feel like a street professor in a way. So I'm selecting the books in regard to how would I want to run this class, or what do I think people need to know now what's going on in the world. So that's it. And we've been dealing with nonfiction. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I have an affinity to nonfiction. I'm not one that likes to get lost in fiction, although I know the value of it in creative fiction and creative nonfiction. But I doubled major in history and religious studies. And I feel as though that a lot of the vein of which we select is in that regard, right? Of history and religious studies. And we got children's books, right? So I do foresee that in the future, we will sit down one day and say, okay, we're inviting 25 authors this year. Who they going to be? But right now, it's just organic and giving people what they seem to be interested in. And the field that I see people interested in is religion and spirituality and history and politics and what's going on right now.
And shifting to books a little bit more. So author is a part of your background as well. So we have to talk about that. So what are some of the main themes and lessons that you and your husband, Scott, share in your book, From GED to Harvard, then INC 500, how two teens went from GEDs to building the fastest growing business in New Orleans?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing. That's all, all God gets the glory because for all of this, I have a deep faith in God, and I believe you have to walk your walking path in life and things come about. I didn't want to write the book. I did not want to write this book because I knew how hard it is to write a book for a heart to come out. I mean, how do you take 40 years of business and put it in a couple thousand words? I don't know. I think we had 30, 40,000 words, right? Like I'm like, I told my husband when they approached us, because we had won some award with Inc. 500 that we were the fastest growing small business in America with this PoBoy Shoppe, Melba's. And then they were selecting authors to write books for the ones that won. And you had to put a proposal for the book. And I was like, Scott, I don't want to write this book. It's just too hard to do that. And, but I went with him with his decision to do it. And I'm so glad I did it. And I guess the message in the book is, there's so many messages in the book. It's written as a conversation between my husband and I. And I guess the message in the book is, it definitely takes two people to do anything. Yeah. And you are going to come up against a lot of things in business, and you're going to fail a lot at a lot of things. And you just can't look at it as mistakes against you as a person. It's just learning. But nothing happens overnight. Yeah. That's something in the book. But one of the main things in the book is you just got to be good. You got to make good decisions and be the best person you can where you are in whatever decision you need to make.
Yes.
And that's about it. And you just give people in business the best things you can. I mean, we were just little grocery stores, 1,500 square feet. But when you walked into that grocery store, that produce was beautiful. There were no bad produce. We didn't try to put the bad produce at the bottom of the box and sell you the top of the box, right? I mean, it's just do the best you can where you are. And when you look back on life, it's all going to be okay. And that's the motto in the book. Just do what you can.
That's important.
The best you can where you are.
That's so important. And it's been a thing that I've been like diving into this book about like Japanese cultural things, and it's this concept called genbate, and it's essentially that, people talk about good luck and all of that, but it's like that's not quite good luck. It's for that high idea. It's like, it's in your hands. You take ownership of it, and it's basically saying, do your best. Make sure you're doing your best, and luck is going to be in your favor regardless, but that's outside of you. You're controlling what you're doing, and you just got to get forth your best effort. And I've been, I think it's no coincidence that I started reading and finished a lot of that book actually before getting down to New Orleans, because that's one of the things that I see about the city or what have you when I come down there is like, folks are going to persevere. There's always a party. There's always a festival. People are always going to shake it up. And
yeah, we always want to. We got too many festivals.
It might be a few too many.
We really do, Rob. We got too many. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's getting out of hand.
Look, I'm telling you.
I mean, look, I love the party atmosphere and all, but they coming out with a new festival every week.
I mean,
it seems like
I was joking about it because of some of the places I hit and just some of the connections and doing these interviews down in New Orleans and in person. Kumari was like, she was like, I feel like they're gonna throw you a festival down here. You're making too many connections real quick. I was like, man, you throw them left and right, man. The Rob Lee Podcast Festival,
right?
Robert Delacroix,
right? Why not? Why not?
So I have two more questions, and then I got some rapid fire questions for you. So,
all right,
this next one goes like this, and it ties to what you were just mentioning. I think I read that mastering the smaller details helps us gain confidence when we inevitably run into a roadblock or run into something that's an impediment. Do you agree with this? And if so, how do you sort of strengthen your confidence in whether it's in business, whether it's in putting out a new and innovative idea? Because you guys are doing a lot, and I dig it. So talk about that a little bit as far as, kind of, conquering those sort of smaller, details and, helping with confidence.
Yeah, well, the smaller details I think are important. I mean, I just remember, I think it comes from our upbringing too in the Catholic school system. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it goes back to that. I mean, you got to do things well, and you got to be disciplined in what you're doing. So I was taught. My house was very disciplined when I was younger. We didn't watch TV a lot. We did what we needed to do. But the discipline aspect of the little things, I mean, just like in the grocery business that I was in, you had to front the shelves right. You had to turn the labels right. You had to rotate correctly right. So it's the little things, the end caps at the end of the shelves had to be neat and the labels of the product turned right. The signs had to be, perfectly written. So the aspect of doing little things right, I think pays dividends over the long term. And I think there's even something in the Bible about that, right? If you do, I don't know what verse it was or whatever, but it's basically, if you want something given to you, you got to do little things well. I mean, there's some parable in the Bible about that. And then you'll get the bigger things or whatever like that. But the confidence factor is an interesting thing that you say, because I think the younger folk and everybody are always thinking about confidence and how you get confidence. And I never did have that problem, Rob. And not to say that I think it comes from my upbringing of I was loved, right? So when you're loved and you have a dose of confidence inside of you that lives in you.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I'm never looking in the mirror asking myself for confidence. I don't even think of it really. And which is quite strange when you ask them the question, right? But I think that's more of a thing. I can't quite put my finger on the confidence factor other than I think I have it inside of me, but it was mostly given to me through the love of my parents and also my thoughts of that I am loved by God and I'm a worthy thing. And I think that gives me my confidence.
I think a lot of us have that. And I think to dovetail on your point, I think with some of the younger folks that encounter it, we run into so much information overload when it comes to social media, the whole comparison thing. And we get on there and it's like, oh, everyone's living a great life, no losses. And we think that in comparison that we suck for whatever reason. And it's not true, but I think it is a constant small poking at you that somehow you're not worthy of whatever, and you naturally have it. And sometimes it's being reminded of that. And, I can, say that I've been, podcasting for now 14 years. And, we look for those sort of validation things. But really, me having the desire and the courage to do it is the validation. And I'm happy and enjoying doing it. So, that's kind of what it is. But definitely, I agree with you.
No, I feel sorry for young folk today to have such comparisons thrown at them. And I didn't think that way when I was younger. It's just I'm so lucky to have confidence inside of me. Yeah.
So this is the last real question, and I think this is the one you already have an answer queued up for it. So this is going to be great. Yeah. What are 3 things that define New Orleans culture?
Well, 3 things. We're very unique, but there's reasons why we are the way we are. One thing that defines us is it's hot and messy, right? We hot. We are. It's hot around here during the summer, and I think that definitely has something to do with our slow nature, right? So I see all kind of things being written about the slow movement of reading or slow movement of food. We just hot down here, and we don't move fast. Right. So we don't rush with things. The other thing is, did you notice that when you were here, that it's just slower?
Yes, it's a great change of pace because everything up here is super fast. It's not too slow. It's about my pace for me because it's like, oh, let me slow myself down because this person is actually talking to me versus this is a transaction. So that's the thing. It's a reminder to be a human again, I think.
Yeah. We're not looking to set the world on fire. We're just looking to get through the day around here, right? And the other thing is, I always think about, because we are port city, right? And we started as a port city, and we helped build half of America right through the port. We talk to each other. When things are coming off the ship, we just are talking people. So I think with the hotness and also that we had to talk to each other, it just keeps going. But I think one of the things that makes us really unique, and I really thought about this for the last 15 years, and it's this idea of we always have disaster at our door. Every year, Rob, a hurricane can come wipe us all out. So we have this collective disaster mindset that we know intuitively that we depend on each other.
Yeah.
I mean, even with Hurricane Katrina, you might have had all the government saying all kinds of things, but it mostly depends on your neighbor being able to help you out at the end of the day. It shouldn't be like that all the time, right? In regard to policies that's supposed to take care of everybody. But I really think this collective mindset of ours that we come together during hurricane season and disasters all at our door makes us a different person, makes us different people.
Yeah.
And we rely on each other. So that's what I've come to discover as I reflect upon life as a New Orleanian.
Thank you. That's great. That's
How'd
great.
that sound? I mean, it's the
It's
truth.
well said. I think you put a better point on it, which I was trying to articulate earlier. That's what I see down there.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
and I'll close on this before we get to those rapid fire questions.
Mhm.
I just thinking, going down there and just reaching out to people and kind of getting this access and being able to do these interviews. And it wasn't much work in terms of how do I get to this person? How do I get to that person? It was like, oh yeah, come on over. Let's do this. And it's very, very
Okay.
neighborly in that regard, especially for someone who's an outsider. But as a few people I've talked to, it's like, how many times you been out here? I was like about 5 times. It's like, some of the places you've been to Melba's, my guy. You've moved up a level. It's like you've been to Melba's, Mother's, and
That's funny. I like
so
that.
giving you a little street cred. So I like it.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
That's good.
I want to hit you with 5 rapid fire questions. They're ridiculous questions. They're fun questions though.
You're gonna psychoanalyze me right here.
A little bit, just a touch.
Okay, all right, let's start.
So I'm gonna start off with the more actual thought oriented question, and the rest of it is kind of just like food questions, what have you. How does a place like any city, let's use New Orleans, what have you, but I think it's applicable for various cities. How does a place grow in terms of like, I guess, bringing in more talent, bringing in more resources, and having more attention while keeping its cultural identity? I think, I'm witnessing it here in Baltimore where there are more folks that are coming in that have an interest, but it may not necessarily be Baltimore centric. It may be this sort of shift of, we want to be like DC and we're not DC, we're Baltimore. So how does a place like balance that from your perspective? Like, how do we bring in, new ideas and welcome new people in, but while keeping what makes us or makes New Orleans, New Orleans?
That's a rapid fire question. I really haven't thought of that much, but at the end of the day, Rob, we're only here about 80, 85 years. There's only so much me and you can control, or the system can control, or I think you never lose a place completely. Yeah. With people saying, oh, you're going to lose this because this is coming in. Yeah. People keep things going on. And you might lose elements of certain things, but it never really goes away, but it gets better.
I love it.
So I had a good professor tell me once. He says, how he said it. He said, it's the same but different. And there's a lot of truth to that. So, but since Hurricane Katrina, I have been up close and personal to understand how things do change, right? I mean, like nothing's the same from the little community that I came from, but which is sad, and you can lament about it. But it's other people and new people and people are people, and I don't even know how fully to answer that, but it just keeps rolling, Rob. So you can't stop things, but hopefully whatever does come into a community will make it better.
Yeah, it's being hopeful for that, and
yes, hopeful.
Having the folks that are there, and I like the way that you put it. Like, there's a limited amount of time, so there's certain pieces that may go away, that may change, and so on. Yeah. But a place is still going to be that place, and I think that's important to sort of realize, because a lot of folks are apprehensive to even the most minute change. And I had some snob conversations, and I'm one of those snobs. I'm like, look, don't put any turkey in my shrimp and grits. Make it right. Don't change it. Don't change it now. But other things, just like, all right, we can bring a little bit more of that in here. It's fine.
Right. I think every breath we take, every breath we take changes us. And change comes no matter what. Yeah. So if there's one thing in life I do see, is that change happens and we can't stop it. And I have a belief in God that in all due time, it's changed for the better.
Yeah.
change is good.
So I want to hit you with the next one I got for you. This is just either or. This is, again, food related question. Onion rings or French fries? What do you prefer?
Onion rings.
You get it.
But I like the onion rings. Yeah, onion rings. Good fried onion rings, real onion rings, not no frozen onion rings.
See,
with salt and pepper, but extra pepper.
That's so New Orleans. It's like I want the real thing. I don't want that frozen nonsense.
Right. Don't give me a big old onion ring that was in the freeze and it's perfect. I don't want that.
What did you have for breakfast? I'm very interested in that these days.
Oh, what did I have for breakfast? It's not good, Rob. Should I tell you the real truth?
Sure, please.
I had a cup of coffee with heavy whipping cream and 2 handfuls of potato chips.
Oh, man.
That's bad, Rob.
That's a very interesting breakfast.
But look, it was avocado oil potato chips.
Well, that's just the good oil. That's the good fat right there. It's great.
Yeah, it's the good oil. Well, it was an open bag right now. I was reading a book, and I made the coffee, and the bag of chips was open right on side of me, and 2 handfuls of avocado oil potato chips.
I mean, it would be irresponsible.
Not the whole bag. Yeah, not the whole bag, just 2 handfuls.
It would be irresponsible not to eat any of those chips that it is just right there. I mean, you're doing a disservice, if anything.
That's right. So that's the truth.
Have you ever Googled yourself? When was the last time you Googled yourself?
When's the last time I Googled myself?
I do it regularly for myself. And
yeah, there's a person. Let me tell you something about that though. Probably the last time I Googled myself was when I was given you needed information on my bio. I'm like, I don't know my damn bio. I don't have a bio. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna send him some links. So that's the last time that's pretty bad. So that means I Googled myself, just the other day, but that was for you.
I appreciate that.
Other than that, I probably Googled myself, I don't know, a year ago. And I don't know, you could probably subpoena Google and they'll tell you when I Googled myself.
That's great.
Right. But there is one thing I will say about that though.
Yeah.
There's a person I noticed, this woman I know, and I purposely don't Google people. Like when I meet them or when I'm gonna meet them, I don't Google them, Rob. I don't want to know somebody. I don't check out somebody and make sure they somebody before I meet them.
Yeah. And
I know a lot of people do that these days, but just like I don't read reviews for a book until I read the book. I won't read the reviews. Now, my husband, he's always Googling somebody, right? Because he Googles them, but I don't Google people, Rob.
No, I
don't really Google myself.
Yeah, I for the nature of what I'm doing, so I don't sound like a complete boob here and not know anything. I have to a degree, but
yeah.
For the most part, I'm trying to come up with what do I find interesting based on what I know about this person and what I've learned about this person. But as the conversation goes, it might be this is surface level, but I'm not Googling to say like, oh, Jane likes onion rings. I'm not doing that. I'm going to ask you. So I think that's the mix too that comes out of it.
Right. And look, I got a story of a Google of one time I invited an author, and I invited him, and then somehow it came about. I was talking to somebody, and they said, "Did you Google him lately?" And I'm like, "No, I ain't Googled him. He's a local author. I invited him. He's got a great book that's out." And then I Googled him, and he had a couple issues wrong, a couple issues with the law.
Oof.
And I came real close to uninviting him. But thank the dear Lord, I didn't let that get under my skin, right? Because I said no, and we talked about it. Come to find out, his mother is next door to me once a week. And it's just that Googling aspect can make you look at people or yourself in the wrong way. Yeah.
And it has to be taken out of the conversation sometimes. I think there is such thing as too much information. And
that's right.
Also, we know how some of these things work. There's an influx of incomplete stories, incorrect stories. And there's certain red flags you can kind of tell, like, I don't know if this is a fit. But in other instances, it's just like, all right, I'm going to let the person talk, and then I should be able to tell from a conversation.
Right. It's a shame. Everybody's narrative is going to be formed by Google, and there's a lot lost there, believe me.
Yes. So this is the last rapid fire question I have. So, when I take Melba's lunch and literacy is the theme, I'll add laundry to that. What is another L word that could go under the Melba's banner? I mean, I feel like there's 4 L's. I feel like there's a 4th L.
Love. Oh my God. Yes. There's love. I mean, at Melba's, we even spell it MELBA and apostrophe S, but the apostrophe is a love, a heart.
That is great. I noticed that. Yes.
Yeah. Love. It's all about love.
I was going to say libations, but love works.
Yeah. Libations. Well, I didn't know that was a word until about 4 years ago when I started studying religion. We just called it liquor, right? But
there's another L. There's another L.
Yeah, there's another L. So love and learn and literacy, and that's about it, Rob. So that's how the world goes around, with love. That's it.
That's great. So that's actually all of the questions that I have, and I want to close out on again thanking you for being a part of this podcast and just sharing your time with me. And
I appreciate it. You have a beautiful voice.
Well, thank you.
And and I appreciate you. I appreciate you talking with me.
Absolutely. I want to let you invite you to tell the folks where they can check out all of the things you've got going on, Melba's, your website, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
I think you can go to melbas.com and melbas.com, and I guess Google us. Google Melbas, and Google Melbas, and eat and read at Melbas, and what's going on with Melbas in New Orleans. So just Google it like that. You'll find something about us. And anybody that's listening out there, and you got a good book, contact us, and we'd love to feature you if we got the room.
Thank you so much. So there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Jane Wolfe for coming on to the podcast. And I'm Rob Lee, saying there's arts, culture, community, love in and around your neck of the woods. You just got to look for it.